Welcome, everyone, to our webinar on afterlife contacts and signs. I am Christine Duminiak, certified grief recovery specialist, an author of 5 books on afterlife contacts, and a radio host. And I'm so pleased to be here tonight with Linda Cheldwin-Fell to do this webinar to help inform people, to let them know that our loved ones still see and hear us, and there's continue to be a huge part of our lives. So never worry about that they're dead and gone, because they're not. They can be in heaven and be with us too. Now, many people ask me, how did you get into this field that you are considered an international expert on afterlife signs, since I'm not a medium or a psychic? Well, I have to share with you that I never was interested in this type of phenomena, and when people would talk to me about it, my eyes would glaze over. But in 1998, something really remarkable happened to me in person, my first spiritual experience ever, when my dead mother-in-law and father-in-law showed up in my bedroom one night and stayed for an hour. This was quite something for me. I was scared at first. I said some prayers. I had protection in the room, and my in-laws, I could only see them, I could not hear them. And after that night, I started to make repeat performances. And I kept thinking, well, why were they coming? I mean, my husband was beside me in bed the night that they came, and I woke him up to show him that his parents were in the room, but he did not have the ability to see them that night as I did. But he did believe me, which was really important to me, because he knows I am a grounded, practical person. But when my in-laws started coming back every night, and I did not know why, I became kind of concerned. I thought, well, maybe this was something really important. For instance, perhaps this was a health warning or some kind of a warning. So I went on a quest to find out what this was all about, and I found out that my experience was called an after-death communication, and that millions of people around the world receive them, and not always in the form of visions, spiritual visits like I had, but in the form of signs. And the first people who actually gave a name to this phenomena were Bill and Judy Guggenheim. So I decided to find out as much as I could, and I contacted Judith Guggenheim, who then sent me to a Christian spiritual medium named Sunny Wells. And we contacted my guardian angel to find out why in the world were my in-laws coming. And my angel explained my mission to me, and that I was going to be helping people. And he gave me suggestions about what to do with this particular mission that I had from God. And then as time went on, I found myself in spiritual bereavement support. Again, not as a psychic or a medium, because I did not have that gift, but just to give comfort to other people who were getting afterlife signs, because 2 years had passed since my in-laws first started to visit, and my dad had passed. And I was getting so many unbelievable types of afterlife signs from my dad that instead of being heartbroken, because I was very close to him, I found myself happy and smiling all the time, because I was getting all these signs to let me know that he was still a huge part of my life, and that meant everything to me. And so I realized that there were so many people who were desirous of getting an afterlife sign that I founded a place called Prayer Way for After-Death Communication, where we would pray for other people to get an afterlife sign from their loved ones, because those who were getting afterlife signs seemed to be at peace with their loved ones passing, and they knew that they were still a part of their lives, and that meant everything to them. But then there were so many people, especially parents, who were just really not at peace, because they needed to get an afterlife sign they would say just to know that their child was okay. So our mission was to pray for other people, to get a sign from their loved one. And we would do this every Friday. And out of the prayers, people were getting an abundance of afterlife signs. It was really incredible. It was like a miracle. Like it was as if our prayers are going right from our lips to God's heart. And he was just bestowing all these afterlife signs on people. And I had a message board, and so they would share their afterlife signs. And over a few years, people kept saying to me, Chris, you should write a book about our experiences. And I thought, I think I am going to do this if God gives me a sign that he wanted me to write a book about their afterlife contacts and signs. And I did get these signs that I was looking for from God, and I decided to take a leap of faith and go with it, since I was not an author. But I thought God was behind the project, so here I go. And I asked our group if they would share their afterlife signs and stories in the book. And out of their stories, there are about 130 stories, came 20 common signs that seem to happen over and over again. And this proved to people that the afterlife signs and an afterlife really does exist. And so we were also finding that people who were so grief-stricken, who were even considering suicide, found that they no longer felt that down and depressed and in a dark place once they start getting signs. And there was like hope for the future, that they would get more signs, and that their loved one was like an angel on their shoulder. So really receiving an afterlife sign really does work as far as healing from grief. And our loved ones most definitely can communicate with us. And I'd like to share 20 common afterlife signs that our group was receiving, and also other people on the internet who wanted to be part of the book, who shared their stories. And the most common one was dream visits. That's when you have a comforting dream from your loved one. It's very vivid, and you really know that you're talking to them again, or you're getting to hug them, or you're sharing information with them. And many times you will remember the dream when you wake up. And I think it's always good to keep a little pad and pen under your pillow, so if you, just as you're starting to wake up, you still have remnants of that dream in your memory. And if you jot it right down before you're fully awake, you'll be able to look back a little later in the day and say, oh yes, they did visit me. Because many people forget their dreams, and then they mistakenly think that their loved one never comes in a dream visit when they do. And so I also have to say about dream visits that if a dream is disturbing to you, even if it does look like your loved one, this is not a true visit of your loved one. For instance, if the spirit in the dream who's looking like your loved one acts like they're angry at you, or they're ignoring you, or they're making you jealous with someone else in the dream, this is not a true visit of your loved one. Also, if they act like they're in pain too, again, this is what I call imposter spirits, that they set out to exploit your pain, and they will come in a dream just to make you even more depressed and hurt. And definitely when God sends our loved ones to us, the idea is to bring you comfort, never to bring you any harm in any way possible. So it's always best before you go to bed at night to ask for God's holy protection, so you will have the best chance possible that only good spirits will come to you in your dreams, and not the other type, the type that you don't want. So try and remember to faithfully, before you meditate or take a nap or go to bed at night, to ask for God's holy protection, because it really does work if you do that. And remember, if you forget to ask for protection and you have a disturbing dream, try and remember that Chris Duminiak said this was not the true visit of your loved one. Put it out of your mind and don't go there. The next type of afterlife sign would be like an apparition or a vision of your loved one, which is kind of rare for that to happen because it takes a lot of energy for spirits to show themselves in that respect, the way my in-laws did. So that's why it's easier for them to come in a dream, and you'll have dream visits much more so than you will have an actual apparition. Now, I'm a Catholic, and I always knew that saints, there were so many stories and books of saints making apparitions, but I never really knew that just the informal saints, our loved ones, could do that too, and they can. Also, pets have an ability to be able to see and hear spirits. So you may find that your pet is barking at something in the corner of the room, or wagging their tail, or getting really excited about something that no one else can see but your pet. So pets have this ability, as do children, to be able to see and hear spirits. So take notice if a pet is acting that way, and say hi to whomever you think is visiting you at the time. Also, as far as pets go, pets will also come and visit us from heaven. God will send them to us to be around us, to comfort us. You may hear their bark, or a noise that they would make, maybe like the rattling of their collar, for instance, or say something that they used to play with, kind of like moves on its own. These are visits from our pets. But they also visit us in our dreams too. So take notice of dreams that you get from your pets. It's just not wishful thinking. They really do come to be around us. And many times when you're just sitting on the sofa watching TV, your pet will be there watching it with you to keep you company, because they know that you're sad and they want to bring you comfort. So, talk to your pets the way you talk to your loved ones. And they're higher beings once they're in heaven, so they understand what you're saying to them. Telepathically, it communicates back to the pet too. Um, Audio. You may hear your loved ones call your name, and this can happen inside of your ear or outside in the room. They also use things like music. For instance, there might be a song that really connects you to your loved one, and you just happen to turn on the radio, or you're walking to a restaurant or some place where that song that connects you to them just happens to come on. Excuse me. So music is a very significant way that they communicate with us. Excuse me, just to let us know that they are thinking of us too, and they're trying to say hi from heaven. Telepathic thoughts. These are kind of interesting because people sometimes wonder, and is the thought coming from me, or is it coming from my loved one? And I've noticed with telepathic thoughts, they seem to be very strong, and they seem to repeat that thought a few times. For instance, here's an example. I remember the first Easter after my dad had passed. My sister really didn't believe in afterlife signs. And because of that, she really suffered a lot more than my mother and I did. So the first Easter that my dad had passed, my sister went out to his grave. And she was so distraught. And she said, Daddy, Daddy, just talk to me. And she heard a voice in her head say, take care of Mommy, take care of Mommy, take care of Mommy. And she knew that was my dad, our dad, answering her. And she started to believe. So this is how it is. You might even hear a song playing over and over again in your head. And you're thinking, why is that playing in my head, and why won't it leave? Sometimes it can drive you crazy. But until you acknowledge that this is a sign from your loved one, it may keep playing in your head. So try to notice and acknowledge it as soon as you can, because they want you to. They just want you to know that you're giving a gift and that they're with you and you're not alone. So always try to acknowledge it and not overanalyze when you get a sign. Sense. You may smell something that has to do with them. For instance, if they smoke cigarettes, you might smell the strong smoke of smell of cigarettes around you, or their cologne or their perfume, or say if the person was a baker, maybe the smell of baked goods around you, or even a very strong scent of flowers uh, around you. I have a funny story. When my dad had passed, and people would ask my mother, well, do you want flowers or do you want a donation? And she said, oh, donation. But then when it came time for the viewing, she was upset because there weren't enough flowers. But that's because she said, give it to a donation for a cause. So when my mother had passed and people asked me donation of flowers, I thought, my mother's going to haunt me unless I have those flowers for her. So I said, please, flowers. My mother loves flowers. Well, after the funeral was over, I came home and I took a little nap. And when I woke up from the nap, I smelled flowers all around me, very strong. I knew it was my mother acknowledging the fact that we had lots of flowers, which she loved, for her funeral. That was a very nice validation that she was there for her funeral, as I knew she would be. They come to all our funerals, by the way. Um, Touches. You may feel someone tap you on the shoulder, or hold your hand, or massage the top of your head, or touch your hair. And in some respect, you can physically feel them touching you. And I know in my own case, the most often way that my parents will visit me is my dad will massage the top of my head when he's around, and my mother will tickle the left side of my face to let me know that that's her. So this is one of the ways to be on the lookout. It may feel like someone is tickling you or there's a feather, but take notice when that you feel that is happening to you, because that truly can be a touch from your loved one. Presence, Presence. You may feel a very strong energy presence in the room. You may feel your bed sink down. You may feel someone lay down beside you in the bed. Sometimes when people feel a strong energy presence, their ears will close up. Also, I know someone who, when she feels an energy presence, it's almost like a Morse code in her ear that she feels happens to her. So there's different ways that they let us know that they are around us that way. Electrical, oh, they have so much fun with electrical things. They can turn your TV on and off, your radio, your garage door, um, the lights in your room. I have a friend who, and the stories in my book, After Death Communications, God's Gift of Love, which a lot of this information is in, by the way. Her dad would communicate to her through her touch lamp, and each level of light that it would increase had a different code for her, which she worked out with her dead dad. And so she had so much fun with that touch lamp because her dad always let her know when he was around, and especially when she needed him or needed help in her life. Computers, they can do a lot with computers. They can change the screen name on your computer if you have AOL. They can send you photographs of themselves. They can send you attachments and emails from yourself to yourself with an attachment of the photo, and yet you know that you never sent that to yourself. They can suddenly play music on your computer that's significant to you, a song that's significant to you. So they seem to really like electrical things. They seem to be able to manipulate them in a very fun way, maybe because they are energy and that's easier for them to manipulate. Phones, text messages, and answering machines are a big way that they communicate with us. You may get a telephone call or a call on your cell phone from their number that has been disconnected, and you might find that on your caller ID that their phone number shows up, but yet you know that number is no longer in service. A text message that they may have sent you a long time ago suddenly shows up, as a new text message from them. They have even left and messages on answering machines too from beyond, such as there's a story in my book where a mother's son left a message on her answering machine, and it was a digital answering machine, and he left it in a part of her of the voicemail that does not record. I guess what I'm trying to explain is after the date and time is comes out from the answering machine, when the message is over, that's when she received her message, after that part that does not record. So yes, they can do that too. They can do so many fun things. Uh, Gifts. It might be a special anniversary, and you're feeling very down and out and sad, and someone will not even know that it's a special anniversary for you and bring you flowers, for instance. Well, and even the color flowers that you love. Now, how does this happen? Your loved one can influence people to do things for you. It's sort of like the telepathic thoughts that I was talking about earlier. They will give them this really strong thought to bring you those flowers, and they don't let up. So the person feels like, I think I'm going to bring them those flowers that I've been thinking about today, thinking it was an original thought of their own, but yet it was your loved one influencing that, so you will get that special gift. Um, Coins, pennies from heaven, dimes from heaven, happens very often. I mean, some people are getting rich now from all the coins that they've received from heaven. When my dad first passed, he would leave dimes. And then when my mother passed, she would leave pennies. And sometimes I would find a penny and a dime side by side, which is very significant when it was that way too, because I know they both were there at the same time. Um, Photos. You may find that a picture hanging on the wall of them is suddenly crooked, or a picture of them or something that is connected to them, a picture may fall down off the wall, or you may find that their picture may be the only one that is turned over on your table while everything else is undisturbed. It's not that they're trying to scare you, they just want you to know that, hey, I'm with you, I'm around you. Butterflies and dragonflies are a way that they communicate with us. Birds and insects and even different types of animals. Spirits have the ability, with God's permission, to coexist with the spirit or into the body of a butterfly, dragonfly. It's not that they've reincarnated into a butterfly or dragonfly, but they are allowed to use the body of the butterfly or dragonfly or animal, bird, or insect to be close to you. And there's lots of stories in my book, After Death Communications, God's Gift of Love, that have these types of experiences, that people just know that there's something really unusual going on. And really the word is unusual or peculiar. If you notice that a bird, for instance, or an insect is acting like almost like your pet or doing something really peculiar, that's when it should give you that aha moment. Oh, I think this is them, because it really is them. And also, when they give us a sign, excuse me, they simultaneously will give us that thought that this is a sign from them. So they want you to notice, because this is a gift from their heart to yours, and they want you to accept it, not overanalyze it, and just say thank you, and thank you to God also. Um, Rainbows and shooting stars are another common way that our loved ones will let us know that they've heard you, and you might ask for a rainbow, or and it suddenly just appears in the sky, and you just have that sense that it's from them. There's also, they use clouds too. Sometimes they will form shapes in clouds that are, for instance, a heart. If you identify as heart shaped as being from your loved one, You might see a heart in the cloud from them. There are other people that have experienced the actual face of their loved one in a cloud formation, that they actually see the face. So they do manipulate these things to give us signs of their presence. You may find that you're getting messages from them from a license plate on a car, or you may have a server who has the same name in a restaurant as your loved one, and that's no accident. Certain numbers that are important to you may show up on a sales receipt. Certain numbers may show up uh, time and time again on your clock. For instance, 111 may show up, which is like an angelic number, or you may find that the time that they transition to heaven shows up on your clock, or your clock may stop at that particular hour. It's not really to spook you, it's just to say, hi, I'm here with you. Candles. Candles sometimes will, almost like they're waving to us when they're around. Some people will actually blow out candles and come back into the room and find out that the candle is lit again, and it's not the trick candle type. So it's just them showing what they can do to let you know that they are around. God incidences are another way that our loved ones communicate with us. They're not really coincidences, but God incidences, where it's a gift from God and your loved one. You may have a flower that just blooms that you had planted uh, in their memory, and it just happens to bloom on the anniversary of their leaving for heaven, or a special date, so you'll know that they are around you. And I used to have a poinsettia plant that my sister gave me for Christmas, and they usually always die. But my mother loved poinsettias, and one poinsettia plant that my sister had given me lasted for 5 years, and I knew my mother was taking care of that for me because she loved poinsettias. And it lasted until one day it just grew so big it fell off the shelf and it just got all broken. So I was a little crushed by that. But I knew my mother was having a lot of fun keeping that alive for me because she knew that I would notice. So those are some of the ways that our loved ones communicate with us. There might even be more ways that I haven't even gone over tonight, but you might find even more too. And if you do, please let me know. Email me and let me know. Now, children have a gift that most of us adults wish that we have, because they can see and hear spirits, and the younger they are, they cannot differentiate between a spirit and a live person. For instance, you might find a child that says, "Oh, Grandma helps me tie my shoelaces," and the little girl has never met Grandma, but when you show her a picture album of her grandmother, she'll say, "Yeah, that's Grandma. She helps me tie my shoelaces." And or the child might say, "Why aren't you talking to Grandpa? He's in the room. Why aren't you talking to him?" And they'll get really upset because they can see them and they think that everyone else can see them too, and they just don't really realize that there's a difference between what they're seeing and that what you're not seeing. And so if you ever wonder if our loved ones can really, do they live on and they are still a part of our lives, and can they communicate with us, listen to the children. Children tell it the way it is, and they do not, you're not talking through a filter. Everything that they say, that they tell it like it is. So if you ever really wonder if these things that are happening to you are for real, listen to the children, because the children tell it like it is. And they're not grieving that they're making things up or hallucinating. Sometimes adults will think that they themselves or other adults are hallucinating because they've never heard of afterlife contacts. I actually have a book out called Heaven Talks to Children, which is all about children's spiritual experiences, and how to nurture a child who does see and hear spirits, and how to nurture them and protect them from spirits that you don't want to communicate with them, but just the good guys. And which is very important, because some children will keep this gift forever, for the rest of their lives. And so you want to be able to know how to do this responsibly, and how the child can do this responsibly also. Um, Tips for getting an afterlife contact or an ADC. Um, some people do not recognize the signs that they are getting, because they're really not, signs most of the time are subtle, so it's very easy to say, I wonder if that's a sign. So what I always suggest to do is to, first of all, go to God, ask God if your loved one can give you a sign, a comforting sign. And then after you do that, because they can only, our loved ones in heaven can only do things that God gives them permission to do. So God may be giving them permission to contact you, and yet the signs are subtle and you're not getting it. So the next step would be to state something specific to your loved one that you would recognize as a sign from them. This way, when you get your sign, you know without a shadow of a doubt that this truly is a sign from them. For instance, ask for a butterfly, and the butterfly may come in the form of a real butterfly, or someone sends you a card with a butterfly on it, or on your computer or something. Then when you get what you asked for, you know without a doubt that your loved one heard you and they're giving you a sign. Excuse me. I hope Linda can cut this out of the video, my coughing. Now, a lot of people really desire dream visits. And so I have some tips for getting a dream visit. Ask God every night to allow your loved one to visit you in a comforting dream. And then ask God to allow you to remember your dreams. Keep a pad and pen nearby or under your pillow so you can jot it down, as I talked about earlier, before you're fully awake and you forget it. And very important, it's to ask God's holy protection before you go to bed at nighttime or before you meditate, so only the good spirits will visit you. Because when we are in that very relaxed state, it's easy for all types of spirits to visit us, and you might be getting nightmares, and you don't want that type of thing. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. I'm going to repeat what I just said, just in case it didn't come through before. Okay, the next step would be, in case this did not come through on the microphone, visualize yourself with your loved one in very pleasant surroundings, like being on vacation at a favorite spot that you used to like to be with. So just reiterating very quickly again, the dream visits. Ask God every night to allow a dream visit. Ask God to allow you to remember your dream. Keep a pad and pen nearby. Ask for God's holy protection before you go to sleep or meditate. And then visualize yourself with pleasant surroundings all around you. Okay. And there seems to be a little problem with the PowerPoint presentation here. I was just going to list what my books were, but they're not. It's not showing up on the PowerPoint presentation now. Let me see if I can. Okay. Well, I do have 5 books for people, and oh, I think I can do this PowerPoint. Here we go. There we are. After Death Communications, God's Gift of Love. It's the perfect gift for a beginner griever who is desirous of getting afterlife signs. It talks about survivor's guilt and suicide. It has 130 stories of other people's experiences and the 20 common afterlife signs with tips on receiving them. And also there's information for those who wonder if this is against the Bible that will help ease your mind about spirits communicating with us and how God is in charge of this, and it'll help ease your mind about it, that this is a gift of God and of the Holy Spirit. And then another book for children who have lost a grandmother called Grammy Visits from Heaven. It explains what death is and how the spirit goes off with the angels and meets God. And then the little girl prays to God, asking for Grammy to come and play with her again. And God is touched by her prayers, and he sends her grandmother back to play with her again. And something very similar in Grandpa Visits from Heaven, if you've lost if a child has lost a grandfather. And the theme is the same. The spirit comes back to play with the child. And both of these books are really a compilation of true stories in a fictional account of afterlife visits that children often receive, which I talk about in my next book, Heaven Talks to Children, which are true stories of children's visits from loved ones, called Heaven Talks to Children. And in that book, it also has how to nurture a child who has a gift, and also biblical references to make you, and how to be discerning, how to discern a spirit, be sure that it's from God. And then last but not least, Grief Diaries, Hello from Heaven, co-written with Linda Cheldon-Fell and Mary Robinson. And if you want to know more about me and my work, just go to ChristineDuminiak.com. Also, you can join our grief support and prayer group on Facebook called After Death Communication, which you can be part of. It's a closed group for people who want to talk about their afterlife signs and asking us to pray for them to get an afterlife sign. It's called After Death Communication and Prayer Wave. But if you go right to my website, you can click right on to join the group. And that's really the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have. Linda, are you still here with us? Okay. Lisa said she can hear me now.
Hi, Chris. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. So I'm not sure how much you missed. I try to recap it a little bit to.
Oh no, I was here the whole time.
Okay, I was just wondering if the room did, because my mic had something happened where it was. I lost connectivity for a little while there.
I saw that. It was just temporary.
Oh, good, good, good. So if anyone has any questions, you can just type them in the chat room. And if not, that's okay too. Linda, do you have any questions about anything that I talk about tonight?
You know, I do. I think it's really important for people to know if their loved one is okay if they've died by suicide.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. That's a really important one. I just like to reassure people that even suicides can, you know, God is very merciful, and some people have brain chemical imbalances, and they're not really responsible for what they've done. And but regardless, once a person is in heaven with God, regardless if it's suicide or not. Once you get a sign from them, you know that they are in heaven with God. So as soon as you get that sign, you can relax about where their soul is. And, you know, I know suicides that had come back very quickly right after to give signs to reassure people that they are okay now. So yes, yes. And if you are worried about their soul at all, just pray for them. I know, you know, that some souls will feel ashamed because they were meant to get help and they didn't get help, and either they realize that their life was a gift from God, and they may temporarily separate themselves from God and their loved ones until they can forgive themselves, not God. They can forgive themselves. And so what you would be so helpful for them, whether it's a suicide or anyone that's left had led a questionable life in some of their actions, if you're worried about their soul, pray for them. You cannot believe how much influence that has to get them to forgive themselves for anything that they might be ashamed of before God. And as soon as they can forgive themselves, they are brought back in to be in God's presence with their loved ones in heaven and on earth and their angels. But it's the soul, and the soul has to reach that point because God is always there. And so, so just pray for their soul, pray for them, and you would be so amazed at what difference that makes, how quickly they can like get over that and get back with God. And then once you get your sign, you know that they are great, great, great.
Thank
So
you.
is that what you were looking for?
So Lisa has a question. She says, how did you learn all of this? What is your background? Is it by experience or another way?
Well, hello, Lisa. That's a great question. In the very beginning of my webinar here, I explained that I was not in this field at all, since I'm not a psychic or a medium, but my dead in-laws visited me in 1998, and they stayed in my bedroom for an hour, and I woke up my husband to explain, to tell him, hey, your parents are here, your parents are here, but he couldn't see them, and I couldn't hear them. I could just see them, and they kept repeating their visits. So much so it was driving me crazy that I went on a quest to find out what this was all about. And that was the beginning of my spiritual grief support work. Again, I am not a psychic or a medium, but this is where God was leading me to be. And because of it, every time I've had a death in my family, um, it was so much easier for me to be happy again and joyful because my loved ones would come back right away in some way to leave me a dime, pennies, touch my head, visit me in dreams, and I could see the difference that it made in my life and in my recovery, that I wanted to do the same for others who were grieving and just missing their loved ones so much, thinking that they were really separate from them. And I formed a group called After Death Communication Prayer Wave, which is now a Facebook group where we pray for other people to get signs. And because of this group, so many people were getting so many signs that they asked me if I would write a book about their experiences. And that's how I did the research even more so to find out how many different types of afterlife signs there are. And there are at least 20, if not more, which I talk about in my book, After Death Communications, God's Gift of Love. So I've learned it just from interviewing people and counseling people and my own personal experiences. You're welcome.
And
So,
Chris, you have spoken all around the nation about your expertise. You're regarded as a national expert on this now, and you're actually going to be giving a presentation at the national convention of the Compassionate Friends.
yes, I am. In addition to this being my expertise, I'm also a certified grief recovery specialist because I wanted to learn as much as I could about helping people turn their heart sorrow into joy, which is my mission. And I believe the afterlife signs are the greatest asset that God has given us in gift to let us know our loved ones are still a part of our lives. So I've spoken around the country, and I'm so honored to be doing a workshop and speaking July 27th through the 29th, 2018, this year, at the National Conference of the Compassionate Friends. It's in St. Louis, Missouri. So anyone out there listening, please register and come. I'd love to meet you. I also do a wonderful guided meditation where you get to spend some time with your loved one in the meditation, and with God, and with your angel. So it's a very healing meditation, and I'm just thrilled that I'm going to be part of it this year. So thank you for bringing that up, Linda.
Well, I'm really excited to see you there. I think that the information that you bring is very helpful and very healing for many people. I've got a question with regards to religion. What do you say to people who say that can't possibly be my loved one, that is the devil in sheep's clothing?
Well, actually, I do talk about that in 2 of my books to help reassure people: in After Death Communications, God's Gift of Love, and in Heaven Talks to Children. And I've done research in the Bible about this. Now, if you're just a follower of the Old Testament, you would think that that is so. But the New Testament, when Jesus gave us another covenant, a new covenant with God, and in that Jesus, and we're supposed to be, God is our role model, Jesus is our role model as Christians and Catholics. And so Jesus was talking to spirits, and so were his disciples talking to spirits. And I actually have the references in my book of scripture where this was so. And also, John the Apostle tells us not to believe every spirit, but he tells us to test the spirit and how to do that to be sure the spirit is from God. Well, if we were not supposed to be, if it was bad to communicate with spirits, then why would John tell us how to do it safely to be sure the spirit is from God? So yes, it's fine to communicate with spirits, but you need to test and discern to be sure that they truly are from God, because it can be from the other side, and you want to be sure. So I have given those testing methods in those 2 books, so you can be sure that you're speaking to spirits that are from God's realms, meant to bring truth and comfort, and not the other side that's trying to fool you or hurt you or give false messages. So there is definitely scriptural support for that. And I believe it's one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit, by the way.
And so for people who, do our loved ones watch us then? Like when we take a shower?
Well, I, as I said, one of my really good friends is a Christian spiritual medium, Sunny Wells. And I've asked that question. We've had many sessions with the angels to find out how things work in heaven and on earth, and what God expects from us. Oh, and by the way, we had a radio show called Ask the Angels. And there's so many podcasts of so many different topics that's still available if people have questions about these heavenly subjects. And but what the angels say is, no, they really don't. They give us privacy about these things, so don't worry about it. They're not really interested in that.
Well, I remember thinking that, or worried about it, when we lost our daughter, Allie. And, I knew that they still interact with our world. That was clear. We had many signs from Allie. But then it was like, oh, gosh, is she watching me do this or that? Or is she, thinking, Mom, why are you, doing this, that, or the other? It is kind of a source of concern about,
Privacy.
Yeah.
Oh no, they don't invade our privacy. That's what the angels said. So you don't have to worry about that. In fact, the night that my in-laws visited me in 1998, my dead in-laws, After about 45 minutes, I had to go to the bathroom. So I got up and I went to the bathroom. We have an adjoining bathroom. And I thought, I'm sure they won't be here still when I come back out of the bathroom. And I got in bed and there they were. They were still there. I thought, oh my gosh, they're still here. But they didn't follow me into the bathroom. So
oh my goodness.
It's kind of
I think, when you're open to this and you realize that they can communicate with us, you do wonder what those barriers are. So I think it's a really good question, and thank you for answering it.
Sure. Yes, they definitely respect our privacy. So not to worry about that. And they don't really view the body the way we view the body with they view like your soul. They look at your soul, not the body.
Right. Oh, good. Okay. That makes good sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what about people who, have they been frightened when they get a sign from their loved one?
Well, I know people that will get frightened if they see a spirit. And I get that because that's really otherworldly, isn't it? I mean, you're not used to seeing spirits, and it can be a frightening experience. So that's probably another reason, in addition to it takes a lot of energy for them to actually show themselves, that they don't. And if you have that experience where a spirit will actually materialize in front of you, and if it's scary, you can just ask God, well, I don't like that type, Lord. Please, let's not do that one again. But when my in-laws came, before they actually came, there were some spirits in the room that were not very godly, and it frightened me. And I started saying my rosary, which was under my pillow. And as soon as I did that, I got the protection I needed, because the whole room turned blue with these sparkling, streaking lights. And I heard papers on my bureau blow. And then the whole room turned very peaceful and calm. And that's when I felt at peace with, because the spirits that were a little scary that had showed up were driven out by God's warring angels. And then I was just left with the good spirits in my room. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, but most people don't really have that type of an experience that I did. And I think it was because I was I believe in Satan, and I believe Satan was trying to scare me off from this whole thing, because he saw what was happening. But I knew to pray, and because I prayed, I got the protection that I needed. And therefore, anytime that's why I'm such a believer in praying for God's protection, because I've seen it before my very eyes come to fruition to protect me. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so do you think that someone who's grieving loss of a loved one, does that grief prevent them from getting communication from their loved one? Can it?
It can, in the sense that the loved one might be trying to knock on your door to come in, but the grief is so heavy that they can't come through. It's like a denseness, like almost like trying to go through a metal door. But that doesn't have to. I think it's more that the person may be so in pain and so in their grief that they're not looking outside of their body and their world. Their mind is just on their loved one, and they're not. They're in such despair that they're not noticing the signs around them. And I've talked to a number of mothers who have said that for months afterwards, it took me months before I realized that I was getting afterlife signs, because I was so into my grief, I wasn't noticing all the signs I was getting all along. So, it can go two ways. It could be that they're having a hard time getting through to you, and or that you're just not noticing it. That is why I suggest stating something specific if you're looking for a sign. But if they can't get through to you, they may get through to a friend who has an easier time to receive. Like, for instance, it's not unusual if I'm praying for someone who is grieving, for their loved one to come visit me in a vision or in a dream. So I would get that message back to that person. Now, it's not because they are like me better, or and it's not a jealousy thing that's going on here. It's that they can get through to me, and they want to get through to me so I can get back to that person who's having a hard time receiving the messages on themselves. So it's just like I'm a surrogate in a way. And lots of friends who have an easier time to receive spirit communication, or even in dreams, are surrogates. So they can give you that message from their loved one, or just so you know that their loved one is letting you know that they are okay and everyone can be at peace. So it's not they prefer the other person over you. It's just that they can't get through to you right now. So they're going to someone who they can get through. You see?
Okay, yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah.
And so for someone who has never had an ADC that they are aware of and they want one, what is the easiest way for them to ask for one? Where do they begin?
They ask God. Ask God to allow their loved one to come visit them in a comforting way, and then state something specific to your loved one that you would recognize as an afterlife sign. And I would not say, I wouldn't pin all my hopes on dreams, because a dream visit at first, because sometimes people don't remember their dreams many times, or and um, and some people think that they don't dream. So I would go with something a little easier, like a coin, for instance, or a certain song that you want to hear, that type of thing, something a little easier. You could work up to a dream visit later, but just something specific that you state to your loved one. And then when you get it, you'll know that, that's what I asked for. You see? So that's how you
Beautiful.
know. That happens to open the door. And then once they know that you recognize a sign from them, they will repeat that sign because they know that you get it. And they really want you to get it. They really want that comfort that they're giving to you, that gift to you. They want you to embrace it. They don't want you to overanalyze it. Just accept it. And there will be more if you do. You see?
Can I share one of my ADCs with Allie?
Oh, please do.
This is one of our family favorites. And for those who don't know me, this is Linda Sheldon Fell. I'm a big fan of Chris's. And we have experienced quite a few after-death communications from our daughter after she died in 2009 at age 15. And one of our family favorites is, and I love this one because many people are skeptical and they will chalk it up to a coincidence or this, that, or the other. And our older son this was a couple of years after we lost Allie, he had come home just for a moment, drove his truck down the driveway, left the truck running, hopped out, left the door open. 2 minutes later, hopped back in, and he felt a lump underneath the floor mat. And it was quite large lump, so he pulled up the floor mat to see what it was before he drove off, and there underneath the floor mat was a blue rock. And Allie, before she died, she used to paint our rocks blue and leave them around the trees for the fairies. And underneath his floor mat was one of her blue rocks, and it wasn't there when he had popped out just 2 minutes before. We've had many after-death communications from Allie, but I love sharing that story because it shows not only the uniqueness of how they can communicate, but that one is an excellent example where a skeptic would be hard-pressed to explain that.
Exactly. Oh, that is awesome. Well, I wanted to tell you, not for me personally, but one of the stories in my book that I think is so amazing, and this has to do with the dragonfly. There was this couple, Kathy and Kevin, and their son, John, when he was about 22, had died from complications of diabetes. And so they started to notice that they were getting dragonflies, and as a sign from him, it could be one or it could be hundreds of dragonflies. So one day, the husband, Kevin, was driving in his truck, and I think he drove a tractor trailer, and he was talking out loud to his son, John, like we all do to our loved ones, right? We talk out loud to them or silently. And he's saying, John, I really need a new pair of work gloves. These are not protecting my hands any longer. So he drives a little ways and he sees something off to the side of the road. And he felt like, oh, I wonder what this is. He felt like this urge that he had to investigate. He pulls over, goes over to it. It's a brand new pair of work gloves. And on top of the work gloves was a dragonfly.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Amazing, Chris.
I know. I just love that. Yeah. So these are, yeah, when you get like these, you just you can't blow it off to coincidence that these are really, setups really for you and like your son, Sean. Just wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, they're amazing. Well, does anyone have any other questions for Chris? You're welcome to type it in the chat room. I see most of you are on headphones, and you have, because this is a live class right now, you have the opportunity to ask Chris anything you want. Many people that will watch it on demand, and they won't be able to ask questions. But for those of you that are in the live class, you can unmute your microphone if you have one and ask Chris, or you can type it in the chat on the right side of your page, and she can see it there and answer your question.
All right.
So we'll give people a couple of minutes here to see if anyone has any questions before we wrap it up.
Okay. But I guess the takeaway from tonight is I would like everyone to know that when your loved one dies, it's not like there is a separation. There is no separation, really. I mean, you just can't see them, but they can see and hear you. And so they're very active as much as they possibly can be without intruding on your free will. And they really are like angels on our shoulders. And so, and when you really get that, it just makes all the difference in the world to know that you're not separated from them, that they come to every occasion that's important to you, anniversaries, weddings, births, they don't miss it. I always feel so badly for people that say, oh, my dad, I just had my first baby and he didn't get to meet him. And actually, your dad knew that spirit before he came down, before that spirit was born to you. They were buddies in heaven. So we all have large soul group families, and every spirit knows each other. And when you go back home to heaven, you reconnect with all your soul group family members. And so your child is, comes from that soul group family, and your dad or mother or whomever, communicates with them when they're in heaven. And then when they're in, when you're pregnant, they still can come and play with that baby. And when the baby is born, the baby can still see and play with them. And they often do. So they're not missing out on anything. They actually knew the baby before you did. To never feel like they're missing out on anything, because they have supernatural powers and they can be in heaven and be a part of our soul group families on earth and in heaven. So they don't miss anything. So always include them. When you go on vacation, include them to come on vacation with you. Anything that you're doing, include them. And I just feel that once you get that you won't be suffering the way that people suffer who think that their loved one has gone off in a black hole somewhere, never to be seen again, or you won't see them until you die, because they see you and they really want you to know that they are with you, actively trying to help you in your life. And the signs show us that. That's part of what the signs do that we get.
Well, how can people contact you if they have questions? What's the best way?
Okay.
Facebook or email or?
Sure. And if you go to my website, ChristineDuminiak.com, you can just email me right through there, or my email address is chrisduminiak@aol.com. And if you have any speaking engagements that you would like me to come to, or any TV shows that you'd like to invite me to be a guest on, I'd be more than happy. Be a pleasure for me to, I'm just trying to get the word out to as many people as possible that our loved ones continue to be a part of our life. And they try and let us know this by the signs that they give us. And it's all thanks to God's love and mercy for us, who's trying to comfort us until we all meet again in heaven.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Oh, and Lorraine said, thank you, Christine, for sharing and having this presentation. Thank you, Lorraine. Thanks so much for coming. And I hope it's brought you comfort and everyone else tonight and whomever listens to this webinar in the future. Linda, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure and an honor, and it's always great to talk to you, sweetie.
You as well, Chris. I adore you, and I'm so grateful for all your wisdom that you share and your expertise. And thanks so much for teaching this class.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope it helps many people, Linda. So thank you. God bless you. Love you, dear.
You as well. I love you too, Chris. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Yes, thank you all. Good night now. God bless you.